So earlier in the lectures, we talked about the dietary restrictions. This is what's referred to as kosher or kashrut. And if the next time you're in the grocery store, if you look, for example, in the aisle where there's the ethnic foods, you'll be able to find kosher foods, and they're labeled as such. Okay, so what does it mean to follow dietary restrictions to be kosher? The animals have to be properly slaughtered. You cannot eat an animal that has been killed by another animal or that's died a natural death. For example, if you're walking through the woods and you come upon a carcass of a deer that is mangled up and you can see that it was partially eaten by a cougar, you can't eat it. Or if you come walking through the woods and you come across a deer that's just dead, you can't eat it. You're only allowed to eat four-legged animals that have split hoof and shoe their cud, right? So for example, the one we're all familiar with in the fields, right? Cattle. When you see cattle in the field and they're just kind of, right? That's what a cow's doing. It's chewing its cud. So what happens is that these animals, right? They'll eat grass and swallow it, and it'll be digested, and then the stomach will form it into like a bolus, kind of like a glob of partially digested grass, and pass it back up into the mouth, and then it has to be chewed again, right? That's cud. And the blood must also be drained. No pork. Now, a lot of people wonder, well, why no pork, but we can eat these? If you stop to think about it, when you're in, say, for example, a restaurant and you order a steak, right? Your server's going to say, how do you want it cooked? And then you respond with, medium rare, right? Because these meats can be cooked to varying degrees, right? Like rare or well done. Now, with pork, you can't do that. With pork, you have to cook it all the way through, or what's going to happen? As if you've ever eaten pork that's not properly cooked, you get really, really sick. And you can get trichinosis. And what trichinosis is, it's worms. And that's because pigs are unclean animals, literally unclean, right? They'll wallow in their own filth. It'll get, on their mouth. And then when they eat food, they're eating, their own feces. And that and you don't want to do that. So that process gives them trichinosis, and it gets in their flesh. And then if you eat that and it's not fully cooked, then you get trichinosis. Now, this was discovered by the Hebrews way back in the day when they were wandering in the wilderness, because it was really, really hard. Say, for example, if you're camping, one thing that you won't do is you won't take pork with you, because it's really, really hard to get a hot fire with limited, fuel supplies, which happens when you're in the wilderness, when you're out there in the desert. So the Hebrews noticed that some of the people that were eating pork were getting really, really sick, and they said, we can't have this, so what's going to happen? Boom, it's off the menu because this is an unclean animal. But you can't eat fish if it has scales and fins. For example, bass, snapper, tuna, or grouper. But you can't have catfish because catfish don't have scales. Sorry guys, you can't eat bugs. Now, you cannot eat meat with milk or dairy. For example, you can have a hamburger, but you cannot have a cheeseburger. You can have a hamburger, but you cannot have it with a milkshake. Right? We have to follow Torah. And it also refers to plates and pots and pans and how they're clean and how they're handled. Now, a lot of people wonder, why do we have to do this? Why? If you think about, what eating is, it's a necessary, event. We have to do this to stay alive. And it's also a common thing because we do it multiple times each day. So what happens, by following this law and all these different restrictions, you're allowing God into another part of your life, and it really takes on a deeper experience for your life. So you're turning an ordinary thing that's very commonplace into a religious experience, right? A religious event, letting God into another part of your life. So that's why we follow kashrut. What's our ultimate purpose? To achieve attachment to God and the afterlife. To serve God in this world. All right, so we have to live in conformity to the will of God. The will of God is expressed in the commandments of the Torah. To bring peace and goodness to this world, to pray, to meditate, to think about all these things. And the performance of good deeds enables us to overcome the evil in this world. So it's important to do good things. And the bliss of the world to come, the afterlife, is much, much greater than anything that we can experience in this world.